Okay, you have to write a letter always. And what we're going to look at now is how to structure your letter, the kinds of conventions that you need to use in your letter, and also some of the language that would be or should be useful when you're doing letters of complaint. Okay, hi Attila, very nice to see you. So let's have a little look first of all at the writing task 1. So it's always a letter, but it can be different types of letters. For example, we have formal letters, we have informal letters, and we have semi-formal letters. So depending on who you're writing to, you may be using formal English, or you may be using very informal English because you're writing to a friend, okay? They do recommend that you keep the task 1 to 20 minutes. This leaves you then 40 minutes for the task 2. And remember that the task 2 is worth double the marks. It's worth 2/3 of the mark. So it is important to, you know, to have that time to do the task 2 well. It's a minimum of 150 words. You don't need to write much more than that. It's perfectly acceptable if you write 152 words. There is no maximum. That's quite a common question. There's no maximum, but remember, if you're writing a lot more than 150, you know, the likelihood is that you're including information that's not relevant, or maybe you're just having too much information, which maybe makes your message less clear. So I wouldn't aim to write much more than 150, you know, 160, 170, absolutely fine, okay? So the letter will always have a purpose. Good to see you, John. The letter will always have a purpose, and a very common one that they ask you to do is complaint, okay? Could be apology, could be asking for information, but it's very, very common to be asked to do a letter of complaint. So we're going to look at some situations, to look at some of the typical situations where you might need to write a letter of complaint. Hi, Marad. So if we look at the first one, what do you think has happened in this situation? Remember, we're talking about a situation where somebody's going to write a letter of complaint to somebody or some company. So yes, very good, Ashok Kumar. Car has broken down, okay? Yeah, breakdown of the vehicle. That's a common one that they ask you to do. What about the second one? What situation are we looking at in there? And who might you be writing your letter of complaint? Yes, it's loud music, okay? Yes, so a problem with your neighbor, okay? So again, this is a situation where you might write to your neighbor, you're making a complaint about noise. That's a very common example. What about the next one? What kind of situation are we looking at here? Maybe she missed her flight, but remember, this is something where it's not going to be your own fault. Yeah. So yes, she's definitely stressed, Michaela. Yes. Yes. So I think, you know, perhaps here the airline has lost her luggage. So she's going to be sending a letter of complaint to the airline. Okay. And then the last one, what do you think might be happening in the last one? Okay, yeah, so it could be, you could be complaining about the service, the customer service, or the food. I think those are really, it could only be the food or the service. But again, you're going to be writing a letter of complaint, okay? So as I mentioned before, there's different types of letters. So, you know, sometimes you're sending an informal letter to a friend, But if you're writing a letter of complaint, yes, Julia, you know, it's much more likely to be a formal letter. There's not really any situation where you're going to be writing to a friend to complain. So it's going to be formal, which then means that you're going to need to use formal conventions and formal language as well. If you were writing to your neighbor, that's a bit more like semi-formal, but because it's quite a serious situation, you would still, you know, probably want to be using quite formal language. Okay, so let's now have a look at the example. So this is the example that we're going to be looking at today, and we're going to write a model answer together for this. So it's always worth, you know, just spending a moment before you start writing and having a look at the layout. So it's always the same layout, the task. So they give you the situation, first of all. So, you know, do pay attention to that. And then they tell you who to write to. So this is very important because who you're writing to tells you what kind of letter it is, and therefore what kind of language you need to use, and also, you know, how you're going to start and finish the letter. So in this case, we're writing to a company. We'll come to that in a moment, Edward. We're writing to a company. We don't know the name of the person, but it means, first of all, that it's going to be formal. Exactly. Okay. And then they always have 3 bullet points. We're coming to it, Italy, we're coming to it. So they always have 3 bullet points, and those 3 bullet points basically tell you the content of your letter. So you don't have to think about, you know, what to put in your letter. Generally speaking, they give that to you. It's always 3 bullet points. It's always 3 verbs at the beginning of the bullet point. And what's great about that is that you can use those 3 bullet points to structure your letter. So you can take each of those as being 1 paragraph in your letter. Okay, so when you move on to the next bullet point, you start a new paragraph. Okay. They also tell you, which is very important, you do not need to write any addresses. Okay, so you start from what we call the salutation. So you start from dear. You don't need to put anything else, no dates, no addresses, you know, nothing like that. That's really going to, you know, cause you to lose time. Okay, so pay attention to all of those aspects of the task. Okay. And then just spend a couple of minutes planning. You need to do this for the task 1 and the task 2. It only takes a couple of minutes, but if you've already planned out the content, so the factual information, if you want to put it that way, it means when you're actually writing, then you can really focus on the language, okay? You can focus on the linking phrases, the grammar, the vocabulary, instead of thinking about what you want to say. Yes, you're right, John. We're coming to salutations in a minute, guys. Don't worry. Let's just focus on the planning for now, okay? So the first thing to do is to underline the keywords in the task. That means that then you're sure about the situation and you're sure about what you need to include. So looking at our sample task, what do you think might be the keywords in the task? What would you underline if you were in the exam right now? Yeah, okay, problems with the car, definitely you need to. The fact that you rented it, yeah. Okay, what else? Yeah, the name, yeah, problems with the cars, car issues. Yeah, I think, it's important you have the information there that you've already phoned the company and they haven't fixed it. So you're going to need to put that in your letter. Okay, so it is worth underlining that. Exactly, Mark. There's been a car problem. The company hasn't responded yet. Okay. And I would also, you know, underline the verbs or the keywords in the bullet points. It just kind of focuses you on, you know, what am I doing in each section of this letter? You've got to make sure that it's very clear to the examiner what the purpose of each of the paragraphs in your letter is. Okay, so let's have a look more at that. So then, you know, have a think about, you know, what you could put. What's the content of your letter going to be? Yeah, for example, Victoria, car problems. What car problems? Is it the engine? Is it the lights? Is it the brakes? You know, you've got to have a specific problem and a specific solution as well. Yeah, so it could be the engine, the brakes, the AC. The name of the company is, you're not going to include that. That's not going to be important in when you're actually writing the letter. Could be the tires. Yes, lots of different things you could say. Okay. If you have a look at this first picture we've got there, why do you think I've put that there? What are we kind of, what area are we looking at the moment? They're not credit cards exactly. Yes, they're kind of membership cards, okay? So if you look at the first bullet point where it says introduce yourself, that doesn't mean your name, okay? But it means introduce yourself as, you know, for example, an important customer, a gold card customer, something like that, yeah? So that's what we're going to include for the introduction. We also, of course, have to say what the car is, okay? Yes, exactly, Amethyst, the model of the car. So that's going to be important. Exactly, Medusa. And then we've got the problems. So we've gone for engine problems. And if you look at the second picture, what's the other problem we're going to talk about? Okay, good. Yes, the lights. So just for example, we've decided to talk about the engine, the breakdown, and the lights, the indicator lights. Okay, exactly, actually, the indicator lights. Okay. Then, as I said, we've got to remember that we did already phone this company and they haven't responded. And then if you look at the last one, it says, what action would you like the company to take? Okay, so it's very important to be specific with that part. It's always when you have a letter of complaint, the last bullet point is say what action you would like the company to take. Sometimes people just write, oh, I would like you to do something about this. That's not good enough, that's not specific enough. So make sure that you are very specific about what action you want them to take. Yes, for example, it could be a replacement, it could be an exchange, something like that, fix the car. You know, it doesn't matter what action you ask for. But it does matter that you have a very specific thing that you want the company to do. Okay, yes, refunds, things like that, those are all possibilities. Okay, so if we just put this in here, so we've got the car, we've got who we are, not in terms of our name, but in terms of our relationship to the company. Then we've got two problems. Quite good to have two problems because then you've got a bit more to say, you've got a bit more information that you can give them. And in our case, we're looking for a replacement and we're looking for an apology and compensation. Okay, so Lamborghini. So this means, you know, that we want them to replace the car, but we've also got some good specific language we can use there, like, you know, getting some compensation, getting a refund. Okay, so, you know, and that would only take you a few minutes. Okay, but it's very important. You've got the information. That means that you're not wasting time or wasting brain power thinking about that kind of information when, you know, you've already got it. You can think about the grammar, you can think about the vocabulary. Okay. So let's have a look at the structure now. So it's always going to be the same structure. You're going to have an opening, so that's going to be quite a standard opening probably. And then you're going to talk about the 3 bullet points, okay? After you've done the 3 bullet points, which is going to be most of your letter because that's where the information is, then you need to have a closing statement, okay? One of the things that they're looking for task achievement is the correct letter conventions. And that basically means how we start the letter and how we end the letter. No diagrams, no charts, okay? I don't know anything about cars either, guys, but as long as you've got a couple of problems, they can be quite general, yeah? Okay, so what we're going to do is look at some of these letter conventions, some of these phrases that are very common for letter writing, and we're going to put them in the right place. So yes, very good, Stanka, you're ahead of everybody else. So part of your opening is always going to be the purpose of the letter, okay? So again, one of the things that they talk about in the task achievement is the purpose clear? If the purpose is not clear right at the beginning of the letter, then you're going to lose a lot of marks in task achievement, okay? Okay, focus, guys, focus. All right, what about the next one? Thank you, Attila. Okay, yep. Okay, so that's one of our standard closing phrases. You're expecting a reply from the company, so it's perfectly good to say, I look forward to hearing from you, okay? What about the next one? Okay, very good. So again, a nice expression here for complaining, extremely dissatisfied, okay? What about the next one? Okay, so good request phrase. I would therefore be grateful if. I would appreciate it if. Those kind of request phrases, very useful for the letters, for many different types of letters. Okay. What about this? Got a nice linking phrase here. Yes, okay, so this is part of describing the problem. So you can give them the first problem and then to introduce the second problem, so you have a clear link. You can say, to make matters worse, then you talk about the indicator lights, okay? Right, what about the next one? Yes, you can say something like extremely dissatisfied. I mean, it is strong. If you feel like it's a bit too strong, you could just say, I'm very dissatisfied or I'm dissatisfied. Yes, okay, very good. So this is another request. Okay. What about the next one? Confusion over that. Yes, this is introducing the purpose of your letter. Okay, so you want to use one of those types of expressions. I'll answer that in a minute, Artur. What about the last one? Yes, okay, so here again, it's the closing statement, but it's a very specific thing that you are looking forward to. Okay. What about as a result? Yes, good. So it's always quite nice in these sort of complaining letters, letters of complaint, if you say what was the result of the problem, you know, so maybe you missed a meeting, maybe you missed a flight, maybe you weren't able to do something. So it just, you know, it's just a good way to finish off describing the problem, is to have the consequence of the mistakes that the company made. Okay, yes, maybe you missed your wedding, whatever it might be, but you have a consequence. Okay. What about the next one? Okay, again, so we've got a very similar structure here, but there's different ways that you know, you could finish it. What about the next one? Okay, good. So again, we've got a similar one, express my dissatisfaction, giving the purpose of the letter. Okay, yes, and just to finish off, another possible way of making a request, you suggest what you like the company to do. Okay, so these are the kinds of phrases that they are looking at. Remember, letter conventions is a really key part of, okay, thank you, John. We all know what the numbers are. A really key part of your task achievement. So you've got to be using the right phrases. Don't create your own phrases, okay? Use the standard ones that we use, okay? Ravinder, it will be on YouTube and Facebook afterwards. I will explain about that at the end, okay? So letter conventions, clear purpose, those are two very important aspects of task achievement. The other one is how we greet, the salutation, as we call it, and how we sign off. So we were talking about this before. So if it's a formal letter, and it's to a company, how would you start the greeting? How would you form the salutation? Perfect, Harpreet, exactly. Dear sir, stroke, madam, okay? We tend to put the sir first, but I appreciate you putting the madam first there. Very good equality there. Again, don't change it. These are things are standard. Don't create your own version of it, okay? So yes, dear sir, madam. You can also use or. I think somebody mentioned that at the beginning. That's totally fine, okay? In some cases, so remember we were talking about the neighbor, then obviously you're going to know, or you probably know the name of your neighbor. So in that case, you can start with the name, okay? Sir it's not really what we would say now, because you're assuming that then it's a man when it might be a woman. So I would just stick to these options. There's not really any other option that you want to be using in this case. Certainly you don't want to be using anything like hi or hello. Yeah, the slash is fine until just in the salutation. That's pretty much the only place where you're going to be using it, okay? And you would do it with capital letters. Notice that they're capital letters. Yes, if you know their name, John, if you're writing to the semi-formal letter, you usually know the name of the person. So in that case, like it says here, dear Mr. whatever, and then you just create a typical surname, okay? If you start with dear sir, madam, how should you close? How should you sign off your letter right at the very end? What's the last thing you're going to put? Okay, very good. Amethyst has got it right. Okay. So, dear sir, madam, goes with yours faithfully, okay? If you have the name, that's when you use sincerely. So do get that the right way around, okay? It is important. So, sir, madam, faithfully, name, sincerely, okay? Again, don't use anything else, okay? Things like best regards are great for emails, but you're not writing an email, you're writing a letter, so it doesn't really work, okay? It's a bit old-fashioned, yours truly, but it's not bad. It's not bad, okay? Just choose yours faithfully or yours sincerely, okay? Remember, we're talking about conventions here. It's about getting the right one. It's not about using something that you think somebody else might not be using, okay? There's no apostrophe. It's just yours faithfully, okay? No, Stanka, if you use dear sir, madam, you need to use yours faithfully, okay? Nothing else. So we'll just look at those. So yeah, things like best wishes, they're great for an email, but you can't use them in the letter, okay? That's not correct letter conventions. Basically what we've got there for the bullet points, those are your only options, okay? Don't use anything else. It won't be correct, okay? So, and it's, you know, letter convention is also to use a comma, okay? So correct salutation, correct sign off, very important, okay?